Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel, and this is the first look at a brand new Marvel game called Marvel Realm of Champions. I don't want to talk too much, but check out this really cool trailer with really nice narration. Got the customized Spider-Man,
The price of freedom is high, but we are willing
Iron
to
Man,
pay.
got some kind of Doctor Strange. Maybe not the Doctor Strange we
many
used to.
futures, in all but one.
The sort of barren planet.
Puny humans are just afraid of Hulk because we're the strongest.
Does what he does best. Arrives. Followed up just in time by a Black Panther and a Thor. And we've got a 3 versus 3. Okay, so this is, well, recognize some familiar voices. I don't know if this is actually RJD, but it sounds a lot like him, which is very cool. That's super cool.
Our realms have been butting heads for a long time.
Seriously, you gotta admit.
I don't know about you, but if fighting a secret war will prevent an open one, I'm game.
Some
Will you join me?
familiar and not so familiar faces sitting at a table there. And this is the whole trailer. And it's the Marvel Realm of Champions. We can pre-register at playmrock.com. You can go there to pre-register for both Apple and Android. And this is a familiar face. This is a familiar logo, and the artwork is very, very familiar. So what is going on? If you go ahead a little bit in the video, you'll also see the announcement that the battle world, it will rise in 2020. So we don't have an exact release date, but we know it's 2020. Now, the overall summary for Marvel Realm of Champions is it looks really cool, but it's missing the 2 key ingredients to get me hype about an upcoming game, especially for an upcoming mobile game. First one is when is it coming out, because you got to know the exact release date. But the more important one is gameplay. There is 0 gameplay in this trailer. This is much more of a teaser, but I waited until now hoping that there would be some additional information that came out of New York City Comic Con, because this was announced at New York City Comic Con, but we really don't have much more to go on other than a lot of repetitions of the same information that we already have about this game. So I'm going to go now into some articles that I've picked up, and in the meantime we will talk about I'll show you guys what the articles say, and then we will also go into some other information that I can sort of glean from what I've picked up from people on Twitter, other content creators covering this game on their channels, and also just my opinions on what kind of game I think this is going to be, because I think that's the biggest question right now. People are wondering, well, what kind of game is this? And you know, what is it going to look like? So we got an article here from Android Police. The interesting thing here is that this website, along with a couple of others, are saying that Marvel is teaming up with Kabam and Netmarble. Now here's the interesting thing, and this is what I think is going to get a lot of you guys all riled up. Netmarble purchased the Kabam studio. So technically, if Kabam is doing something, Netmarble is sort of doing something too, even though Netmarble hasn't actually, from what I've read and what I understand, they didn't actually tinker with or change the Kabam team at all. They just sort of purchased the team and let them continue to do things as they were, sort of how Tencent purchased Riot for League of Legends, but they continued to be the Riot team creating updates for the game, and Tencent didn't really meddle in that too much. I mean, you could argue that, but it's basically, it's not like it was absorbed and then the Kabam team was assimilated or they were changed around. It seems to be pretty much, to what I know, 100% still the same team. So it's interesting to see here that a couple of news outlets are actually saying that it's Kabam and Netmarble, but some are just saying Kabam. But it really doesn't matter too much. The only real intersection you guys have to know here is that, well, Netmarble has a division, has a team that makes Marvel Future Fight, which is of course the game that you're primarily here for, and then Kabam, which is also owned by Netmarble, makes another Marvel game that you're not necessarily playing, but you could be, called Marvel Contest of Champions, and they're going to be making Marvel Realm of Champions. If you go over to a couple of the other news sites, you just see Kabam written, but there's actually quite a bit of difference in terms of the information that they're giving out. So I just wanted to cover some of that. Some websites and some articles say that it's a sequel to Contest of Champions, but everything that I've read, everything that I've heard is that it is not a sequel. So for those of you that play Contest of Champions and are worried that this is going to mean the end of Contest of Champions, you are not you shouldn't worry. You're not in danger. Your gameplay is going to continue for years to come. Everything that I've read indicates that there's 2 development teams now. One development team is continuing to make Contest of Champions updates, and one development team is starting to make and you know, going to continue to make Realm of Champions. But the thing that you will notice if you follow Contest of Champions is that the art style is extremely similar, and that is essentially where you get the intersection between Kabam and this new game. So this art style, for any of you that are paying attention, is obviously extremely close to Contest of Champions. Now, for some people, they don't like that. For some people, they do. I'm sort of neutral about it. I used to hate the Contest of Champions sort of chunky, boxy, blocky sort of style, but I think they've refined it a lot in the last 4 to 5 years, so I think it's actually a lot better now, and it's a lot more detailed, so I'm not too worried about the art style. I'm not too worried about Kabam, you know, making the game from the point of view of the art perspective. We'll get into the gameplay and the monetization just a little bit later, but that is basically what we know about who is behind designing the game. And so if you take a look, and if you think about who's designing Realm of Champions, Kabam, you can expect a few things from them, because although it's a different team, it's going to probably borrow a lot of the same philosophy principles, which is that, you know, this is heavily based on the Realm of Champions appears to be heavily based on Secret Wars, and Contest of Champions is already based on existing comic book storylines. And from what I've read, again, I'm not the biggest Contest of Champions player, but I talk to some players, and I also try to keep up with updates. That game seems to be quite follows quite closely with some of the comic book you know, sort of storylines and some of the major character shifts, introducing, you know, at first it was Maestro, and then you have the Collector, and then you have the Grand Master, and there's like a brotherly conflict and stuff like that. So there will be presumably a pretty heavy emphasis on things that are related to comics in some way, but the major shift going on here is, rather than just making you play as an existing Marvel character, playing as Hulk, playing as, you know, Stephen Strange, Doctor Strange, Peter Parker, Spider-Man, Tony Stark, Iron Man, you're going to create and customize your own version of the character. So this is where it sort of deviates from comic books, and this is where it opens the door. And that's really what a lot of these games are trying to do nowadays. They're trying to build the IP and take it to new places, because if you constantly rely on just what exists in the comics and nothing else, it really limits your design space. But by creating new characters, which is what Marvel is doing all the time, but also by allowing players to create sort of their own versions of characters, you basically, you know, initiate limitless possibilities. So you might have characters relegated to certain classes, or, as we're going to find out, certain sort of factions or teams, but then within that team you can still customize it, you know, endlessly. You really start to get a lot of magic there. The thing that I really like possibly about this game, Realm of Champions, is that it seems to me like a bit of a mashup between Marvel Contest of Champions and Marvel Future Fight. One criticism that some people have of Contest of Champions is that there's not enough individual customization. Every character feels the same. Maybe you play the character differently and you have different skills with the swiping and the tapping, but every 565 Ghost is the same. There's nothing to differentiate the actual character. It's just the player behind the phone. But in Marvel Future Fight, it's the complete opposite. Characters are maybe possibly a little bit easier to play, or a little bit more uniformly played in terms of pressing the right buttons in the right order, the skill rotation. But on the flip side, your character build matters for everything, and there's so much deep customization on the character build side with Uru, ISO 8, custom gears, uniform options, team ups, and leaderships and passive effects. So there's a lot of that going on in Marvel Future Fight that Contest of Champions doesn't necessarily capitalize on yet. And this game really feels like the amalgamation, the combination of both of those things together, because when you listen to the interviews, the thing that they're pushing the most, the thing that Bill Roseman and the other people involved in this on the side of Contest of Champions, like Kabam, I think his name is Dan or something, Greg or Frizera. Anyway, sorry, I don't know his name. He's the creative director and he's the art director. They really emphasize factions, the different factions, and they super emphasize customization of characters. So if we take a look at a few more images here, I want to show you guys first the actual map. Now, this is where they start to develop the storyline of the game, and so you can see there's like Temple of Vishanti, there's Gamma Horde related to the Hulks, Pyramid X, which is Apocalypse and also relates to mutants, Wakanda, Asgardian. So essentially the way that it works is they're funneling characters into different factions or different sort of tribes. And if you want to play as a Captain America type character, now we don't know what that's going to mean, but if you want to, you're going to have to join the Patriot Garrison. If you want to play as sort of like a mythic Norse god type character, you're going to want to join the Asgardian Republic. And then from there, you can further customize your characters. Whether you'll be able to mix customizations, i.e. making a Hulk-type Gamma Horde character that has 3 claws on each hands, a la Weapon H, which sort of mixes Pyramid X and Gamma Horde. We really don't know that yet. We don't know how deep the customization goes, but at least for now, in this sort of example, they are sectioning off certain tribes of characters in order to create this sort of innate sort of geographical and political tension. And the way that they describe the game, this is the other important thing to sort of get a clue into the gameplay, they describe it as real-time RPG battles. And they describe one-on-one battles, and they also describe 3-on-3 battles. So I'm not really sure how that's going to pan out. I think there's essentially 3 ways that they could do it. The first way that you would do something like 3 versus 3 real-time PvP would be turn-based. Now, normally speaking, turn-based games are usually referred to as either turn-based games or strategy games, and that word is not used anywhere as far as anything that I've found, any sort of media, any sort of information I found. So I'm hesitant to call it a turn-based game. I know that turn-based games aren't the most popular types of games because they can be a little bit slow, but they also are very successful in other realms, and you guys can probably think of a, not long forgotten but dead Marvel game that was turn-based, Marvel Avengers Alliance. So it's definitely possible that this is in a way an amalgamation of 3 Marvel games, 2 current ones, Contest of Champions and Marvel Future Fight, and then one long dead one, Marvel Ultimate or Marvel Avengers Alliance. And then it's also possible that it would be an action, an action-based game, which means that it would have to be real time and you would have to be controlling the characters as you're fighting. I find that a little bit more difficult to expect and to sort of picture, because how can you really do real time 3 versus 3 when you're controlling all 3 characters? You can really only control 1 character at a time. So in Marvel Future Fight's case, it could be something like 3 versus 3 Shadowland, or 3 versus 3 or 2 versus 2 Battle World, where you're controlling 1 character and the AI controls the other characters, and you can freely switch between your characters, but you can't necessarily control them all at the same time. Or it may be that you will only ever really control 1 character, but when you enter a 3v3 battle, you're bringing along 2 of your friends, whether your friends are there in reality or they're not there, but the AI versions of themselves are there, but it's your friends' builds. We'll have to wait and see, but I think that's the biggest question mark right now. Another thing we can take a look at here is this sort of photoshopped image of both the Realm of Champions and Contest of Champions melded into one. And this was made by MCOC Truco, so big shout out to you. Thank you. Sorry that I didn't ask you ahead of time to use this information, but I just wanted to show it off here. And basically it shows off, and I have never seen this image before, so I was really excited to find it on Google, the different Battle World Barons. And I guess each individual map is going to, or like piece of the map, chunk of the map, will have sort of someone controlling it at the top. We've got Stark Prime, we've got War Thor, we've got Queen Shuri, and so on. And so it's unclear as to whether these are going to be NPCs or whether it's going to be something else. It's unclear whether you'll be able to, interact with them or possibly take their place, or if they're just there to sort of add flavor to the world, but they're not actually impacting things on a large scale. If they're sort of just in the backgrounds, behind the scenes, sort of pushing the narrative, the story along, but not actually engaging in battles themselves. But it's very, very cool. And then if you look at the bottom there's some orange circles and some yellow circles. This is how the game relates to Contest of Champions. And if you look at the larger image of Contest of Champions and the way that they've mapped out their characters, the middle there is Realm of Champions. So it's basically implying that there is a pretty heavy connection between Contest of Champions and Realm of Champions. they don't exist separate from each other. They definitely exist in sort of like worlds that sort of exist on different layers but are extremely closely connected, but they're not going to be exactly the same. So there may not be a lot of crossover when it comes to certain game mechanics or certain ideas that we've come to expect. I'm not really sure how they were going to do something like 3 versus 3 with swiping and tapping, but we're going to have to wait and see, you know, what the gameplay is like, whether it's turn-based or real-time action, and then whether it is sort of tap and swipe controls, or whether there are on-screen buttons that you press, or some other combination of effects. Who knows? They could even do like a Clash Royale with dragging cards. I have no idea these days. There's so many mobile games coming out with so many different combinations of gameplay types and mechanics that it's hard to anticipate ahead of time, especially when they've done so little to really give us a description of what this game is going to be. So there's definitely two feelings that I'm getting looking at this game. A lot of promise, a lot of potential coming out, and then a lot of question marks. Definitely something that I want to see is gameplay, and to really hammer down what exactly the core game is going to look like and the core gameplay is going to look like, and then that'll give us a better idea of what monetization is going to look like, possibly the longevity of the game, possibly what end game content is going to look like, and things like that. But for now, I really like the idea of deep customization for Marvel characters. I think that is one thing that, although it doesn't attract all Marvel fans, because some really just want to play with the vanilla versions of the characters, it does appeal to extremely large audience. You have games like, you know, DC Online or DC Universe Online. We had not Marvel Heroes, but DC Universe Online allowed you to create sort of customizable DC characters where it sort of looks like Batman, and you can get pretty close, but it's never really going to be the real thing. But you can combine different aspects of different characters, and I think that appeals not only to hardcore Marvel fans or hardcore comic book fans, but also casual fans as well. So I'm personally very excited, a little bit skeptical. You know, the Kabam thing, the fact that we have no idea what the gameplay is like and what kind of gameplay it is. I'm a little bit weary of turn-based games in general, but on the plus side, we already have Marvel Strike Force, which is a turn-based game, so it's a little bit difficult to see them doing another turn-based game that would sort of directly compete with Marvel Strike Force. And then you could make the same argument for Tap and Swipe with Contest of Champions, but it is by the same studio. It's by Kabam, so maybe that's just in their wheelhouse and they don't want to deviate too much from it because it's something that they know and they're comfortable with and they've been doing for 5+ years. We don't know how much, if any, impact or any sort of influence Netmarble is going to have on this, even though they are technically the parent company of Kabam. So we're going to have to wait and see, essentially. So keep your ears peeled and your eyes open for more information about this game. If you see anything online, hit me up on Twitter, tag me, or post it on my Discord, whatever. And yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know if you were excited about the game, and if you're not, let me know why. Thanks for watching. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, and of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.